I'm just going to get started with the reading because it's going to be the first that we do in the selective and the OC test. So let's go. So this is what the department says is going to be in the reading test. So they say the reading test questions assess various reading skills through a diverse range of texts. The text includes different genres such as nonfiction, fiction, poetry, magazine articles, and reports. So this is all really broad. We do know that it's 40 minutes for 30 questions for the selective test and 30 minutes for 25 questions for the OC test. Luckily, they do give us more structure to how the test goes. So we got the differences between selective and OC here. Main difference is selective obviously has more questions, but it's also a bit harder because with part one, there's the option between a narrative or descriptive extract from a work of adolescent fiction or two short extracts on a related theme, typically one from the past contrasted with a more modern piece, opposed to the opportunity class, which part one will always be that first narrative or descriptive extract. This is the same with part three of the selective and opportunity class tests. And pretty much all this means is that students going into the selective test are going to require more practice with different types of questions just in case they get prescribed. So for the interest of time, we're just going to be focusing on part one, which is in both of them. And then we'll be going through some strategies, the right mindset to approach these questions. And yep, so let's get into part one. All right, so the department says that all of these dot points are the possible things that can be questioned in part one. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but the most important ones that I want to talk about now are implied meaning, the effect of language features and word/phrases used, and exemplification and comparison. So the department has put a much larger focus on reading globally. So looking at like the text as a whole and not looking for like discrete details within the text. So this means that students are going to need to be constantly like looking at the implied meaning of words and not exactly what is on the page. And yeah, let's just go into some strategies and tips now. So that'll take us into the next section. So first thing I want to say is that students should be regularly reading in their own time. I know it's really hard to make time for this, but it's really going to improve their vocab, their analytical skills, and their ability to read and process information quickly. Second thing I want to talk about is practice purposeful reading and skimming. So this is probably the most important thing that I can talk about is a lot of students will automatically, they approach the reading, they're going to read the whole text, try and like understand it as much as they can, and then flip to the questions, and then just try and answer the questions from what the best of their memory after reading the whole thing. So this is bad for two reasons. So first, it's not as accurate because students aren't going to remember all the details. They're not going to know exactly what they need to remember. And it's a lot less time efficient as well because students are going to need to reread parts over and over again until they can find the answer. So this is why students should be practicing purposeful reading. So this is where students read the title to get an idea of what the text is about, read the first question to narrow that focus a bit more, and then flip into the questions and reading the questions first, working out what keywords, what are the important things that they need to be looking out for when reading the text, and then returning to the text, skimming through and finding those keywords to really like locate your answers. So this is really important, like for all the reasons I just mentioned. And when students are doing this skimming and reading, they should be searching for explicit detail and implicit meaning. So like what I was saying earlier, looking for the implicit meaning and stuff and not just the words on the page. So like really processing what is the author trying to say here? What is the image that they're painting? Yeah, and like what does it make us question and stuff? Next thing I want to talk about is use process of elimination. So process of elimination is really important in the reading section because a lot of the time there are multiple correct answers in the question. So there'll be two things that people could argue could be correct. And what the reading test requires is that students analyze which one is more correct in the context of that text and that question. So in that case, it's really important that students are using purposeful reading and skimming for the important keywords, crossing out the ones that are not applicable to that question, and then comparing two or three of the answers that are left in much closer detail to work out which one is correct. And the last thing I want to say is skip questions when necessary. So this is really important, not only because all the questions are weighted equally. So if students are spending, like 2, 3, 4 minutes on a single question, that's just going to be a waste of time that they could be using on other questions. And secondly, this is especially important in the reading section because a lot of the time questions later in that section and answers later in that section will give more information for the questions earlier in that section. So let's say I can't do question 2 because I'm missing some sort of information and I just can't find it. Maybe question 5, 6, 7, or 8 will give that information that I need to answer question 2. So if students are spending too long on it, they should skip it, keep moving, and then if the answer comes to them later, quickly circle that. Yeah, so those are just some general tips for part 1. And then now I'm going to display how students can apply these like in a real setting within the test. So yeah, what exactly does this look like? So this was taken from the selective test part 1 in 2023, and I've just taken it straight off the sample paper. So we've got 2 texts. We've got the comparison one for the selective. And yeah, just like to reiterate that all of this is applicable for OC and selective. And although OC will not have this comparison one, which is a bit harder, all of these analytical skills and the way that I'm thinking will be applied for the OC test. So let's just have a look at this. So I'm going to show you what I mean by purposeful reading. So text A, The Call of the Wild. From The Call of the Wild by Jack London. Buck, the dog, enjoys his new freedom after being rescued by John Thornton, a kind new master, having pulled a sled for thousands of miles. So immediately I read this title, I see The Call of the Wild. I'm thinking, Call of the Wild, this has got to do with nature and animals of some sort. Then I see Buck, the dog, enjoys his new freedom after being rescued by John Thornton. I'm thinking about the relationship between animal and human. And I can see that this is a good relationship, a kind new master, and they do have a strong one, having pulled a sled for thousands of miles. So that's what I'm thinking in my head when I read this. Let's have a look at the next text. Text B, from The Effect of Pets on Humans. So again, the effect of pets on humans, I'm looking at the relationship between animals and humans. Anyone who has ever owned a pet knows that they have the capacity for the kind of unconditional love that is seen otherwise only between a human and its offspring. So just like the first one, we're looking at the positive relationship that exists between animals and humans. So now let's have a look at our questions. So this is what I mean by purposeful reading. So question 1, what theme is dealt with in both extracts? The owner sensing that the dog is ill at ease, the mutual affection between dog and human, the jealousy dogs have of each other or other pets, and the dog trying to warn its owner about something. So immediately, just from looking at the title and the first sorry about that. Immediately, just from the title and the first section, first sentence, we know that it's not going to be C, the jealousy of dogs have of other pets, because both of them have shown a really strong connection between humans and animals. So we're crossing out C immediately using the process of elimination. And now we're looking at what are the keywords in the ones that we have left. The owner sensing that the dog is ill at ease, the mutual affection between dog and human, and immediately I'm thinking that this is probably our answer based off the start, and the dog trying to warn its owner about something. So our keyword is warn. Okay, so let's return to the text and look out for those keywords. So we're scanning through this and we're looking for ill at ease and the mutual affection between dog and human and warning. So let's have a look through this first one. We see that our introduction here shows that the strong relationship between them. Our second paragraph here, we can see it's talking about how he was, the dog was sick. And then, but we're not seeing anything about warning or being ill at ease. Continue down. We still don't see anything about warning or ill at ease. And we're just going to scan through this whole text and then we'll find that none of those things really come up. So that's how we would narrow down our answer for 1 to be B. Now let's look at question 5. So in text A, what are we told about Bok and the female dog Skeet? So our keywords that we're looking at here are Bok and Skeet, and it tells us it's exactly going to be in text A. So we can, sorry, I'm having trouble with the pen. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. So Skeet was initially wary of approaching Bok. So we got initially wary as our keyword here. Then in B, we have initially irritated. C, Bok eventually appreciated Skeet's affection. So you got appreciated. And Skeet eventually tired of Bok. So you got eventually tired of Bok. So these are the things that we're keeping in mind when we're returning to the text to read it. So let's go back to text A. So we're looking through, we're scanning down until we find Skeet. So we find Skeet in the second paragraph, and now this is where we're going to start reading in closer detail. So Bok, John, Thornton, and Skeet, waiting for the raft to come that was to carry them down to Dawson. Skeet was a little Irish settler who early made friends with Bok, who in a dying condition was unable to resent her first advances. Okay, so immediately we see this and we see early made friends and unable to resent her first advances. So when we look at the implicit meaning of this, yeah, they made friends, they were friendly, and Bok was like he was happy with it. He was unable to resent those first advances. So what we can do from this is narrow down our answers. Narrow down our answers. Skeet was initially wary of approaching Bok, so we can cross that out because they made early friends. Bok was initially irritated by Skeet. Again, we can cross this out because they were unable to resent. So we've narrowed our answers between C and D. So Bok eventually appreciated Skeet's affection, or Skeet eventually tired of Bok. Okay. And then just to continue reading this through, she had the doctor trait which some dogs possess, washing and cleansing Bok's wound. Regularly each morning after he had finished his breakfast, she performed her self-appointed task till he came to look for her ministrations as much as he did for Thornton's. So here we have till he came to look for her ministrations as much as he did for Thornton's. So looking at the implied meaning of this, we can see that he began to look forward to her, the other dog, looking after him. So that narrow down our answer, we know that this one will be C, eventually appreciated Skeet's affection. Okay, let's have a look at number 6. In comparison with Skeet's, the expression of Buck's love for Thornton's was A, more impulsive, B, less complicated, C, more erratic, D, less needy. So we have love as our main keyword, and then we're just looking at these different adjectives: impulsive, complicated, erratic, needy. So let's return to the text, and we're looking for the keyword of love. So we're scanning through, nothing in the first paragraph that we saw, nothing in this second one, nothing in the third one. And then here we find Buck had a trick of love expression that was akin to hurt. He would often seize Thornton's hand in his mouth and close so fiercely that the flesh bore impress of his teeth for some time afterwards. And as Bok understood the oaths to be love words, so the man understood this feigned bite for a caress. For the most part, however, Bok's love was expressed in adoration. While he went wild with happiness when Thornton touched him or spoke to him, he did not seek these tokens, unlike Skeet, who was wont to shove her nose under Thornton's hand and nudge till petted. Bok was content to adore at a distance. He would lie by the hour, eager, alert at Thornton's feet, looking up into his face, studying it, following with keenest interest each fleeting expression, every movement of change of feature. Okay, so from that extract, we see the details, but also the implied meaning of this is that Skeet's love is more in your face. It is assertive, opposed to Bok's love, which is more passive and watching from a distance. So we can cross off more impulsive because it's quite the opposite, and more erratic because again, it's quite the opposite. Bok is observing from a distance. So it narrows down our answers between B, less complicated, and D, less needy. And this is one of the cases where both answers could be correct. Some could argue that his love is less complicated, and some will also argue that it's less needy. But if we return to the question and to the text, we can see that there's a lot more evidence towards it being less needy. So direct evidence for this, we're going to say, unlike Skeet, who was wont to shove her nose under Thornton's hand and not feel petted, Bok was content to adore at a distance. So that's our first bit of less needy. And then he would cling to each fleeting expression, opposed to, shoving his nose under Thornton's hand. So while some would argue that this is more complicated, this is very strong evidence towards less needy. So yeah, this answer would say D, less needy. And according to the last paragraph, Bok was haunted by the thought that. So this is an easy one because it tells us exactly where we need to start scanning according to the last paragraph. So Bok was haunted by the thought that. So we're going to be looking in the last paragraph, and we're looking for haunted. These are one of our main keywords. And we're looking at captors. He might never see the wild again. So it's wild. He would lose his way in this new land. So lose his way, and his present owner, would disappear from his life. So knowing these things in my head now, I'm going to turn to the text. We're looking straight into the last paragraph. For a long time after his rescue, Bok did not like Thornton to get out of his sight. So the implied meaning of that is he wanted to stay close. From the moment he left the tent to when he entered again, Bok would follow at his heels. So immediately I'm starting to think that the answer is going to be D, but we're going to keep reading to check for the others. His transient masters, since he had come into the Northland, had bred in him a fear that no master could be permanent. Even in the night, in his dreams, he was haunted by this fear. So there we see our haunted. So although they do talk about the captors, there's no direct correlation between him fearing for the captor's return, but more so what the captors had bred into him, which is a fear of losing his master, as we can see by a fear that no master could be permanent. So that is why we'll eliminate A. He might never see the wild again. We see no mention of the wild, so we can cross that out. He will lose his way in this new land. Again, we see no mention of that, so our answer is D. Yeah. So that is just what I meant by purposeful reading with an example from the 2023 selective. And that's it for the reading section. Thank you, everyone.